You're about to cross a threshold, not of sight or sound, but of consciousness, into the realm where perception and suggestion intertwine, and the mind wanders beyond familiar boundaries. In this world, hypnosis is neither illusion nor entertainment, but a passageway between science and mystery. Time to enter the hypnotic state here on Things Visible and Invisible. Steve, the last time we spoke, you gave a very interesting exposition, I suppose, of the whole world of hypnosis and also hypnotherapy. What we didn't get a chance to talk about was the extent of your work, both geographic and also in terms of the involvement with certain types of cases. There's quite a celebrated list of people that you have put into trance states or whatever, and we'll go into that in a moment. But what I wanted to talk to you more about in this is your whole work in the hypnotherapy world. But I suppose I wanted to get your take on this. And on the last occasion you talked about, or you give us the image of the iceberg and the consciousness that's above the surface and the subconscious, which is below the surface. Talk to me a little bit about the power of the subconscious in people's lives, especially people that you've dealt with in a therapeutic setting.
It's actually said that we are responding 24 hours a day to whatever is in our subconscious mind. And that therefore means if there's a lot of trauma in the subconscious from the past, we are reacting to that all the time. So it means that we're not living our lives freely. There is something which is inhibiting us in some way. It may be just causing specific issues like depression or a lack of confidence. It may be causing just like a general unhappiness with life. And so what we're doing as hypnotherapists is aiming to go into the subconscious to let that energy, those emotions, if you like, out of the subconscious to free a person up. And because from the more positive way of looking at it, or as a flip side, the subconscious is the powerhouse of the mind. It means that when we're working with the subconscious, we're working with a very powerful sort of entity, really, which has got this extraordinary wisdom. It knows everything there is to know about us. And when we're working with the subconscious, it can often do the work for us, but it has a desperate need for us to be well as well. And so the difference, if you like, between the conscious and subconscious mind. So some brain research some years ago, I'm not sure how they came up with these figures, but they stated that the conscious mind takes on board 50 bits of information every second, whereas the subconscious takes on board 11 million bits of information every second. So this is another reason why hypnotherapy is so powerful. We're working with the powerhouse, the engine room of the mind.
Now, you've been in the world of hypnotherapy since 1992, and I've had 15,000 plus consultations. Some of them are more famous, celebrated. You've published a memoir, Adventures of a Hypnotherapist. Talk to me about some of the more, if you can, some of the more unusual case studies that you've dealt with and what they tell us about the power of hypnotherapy and also the power of this subconscious in our lives.
Okay. There's a particular story I like to tell, which I opened the new book with, which is a client who came to me with a severe liver disease, and she'd been given 6 months to live by her consultant, her specialist. And this liver disease is one in which tumours grow on the liver. They're not cancer tumours, but they are tumours which cause a lot of pain. They become the size of grapefruits, and then they stop the liver working properly. They push the internal organs out of the way. And this lady came to me. She was in a lot of pain. She was doped up to the eyeballs on morphine. And she just said, "You're my last hope." So we started to do hypnotherapy. We started to take her into trance. And within a week, she was off the morphine. She just didn't need it anymore. At the end of our very first session, the pain that she was suffering as she walked in, which was 10 out of 10 when she came in, had dropped down to 4 out of 10 within an hour, because I'd used some hypnotic pain management techniques. And we then started working, first of all, to heal the liver. And we did that in a variety of ways, using visualizations, using suggestions. The tumours actually stopped growing, and she started to get her life back. She was able to eat, because she hadn't been able to eat properly for months. We started to work on the emotional causes of the illness, and every illness has emotional causes. This is a part of medicine that is ignored, but every illness has emotional causes. So we work with traumas in the past, we release those. She got to be so strong that her specialist wanted to do surgery with her on the tumours. And it was surgery that he'd done twice before, and it had been an absolute disaster both times. Partly because the lady had to drink a dye down for the surgery, so the surgeon could see up on a TV monitor in the operating theatre what was happening in her body while he did this very delicate work. But she was allergic to the dye, so she spent the whole of the surgery vomiting and retching. The first time he actually damaged the liver itself, and the second time he damaged the gallbladder so badly she had to have a gallbladder removed. Both times she was in hospital for weeks after the surgery. So when the surgeon said, I'd like to do the surgery again, I said, we'll do it in hypnosis, which was a heck of a thing for me to say, because hypnotherapists in those days don't get trained in hypnosurgery. But what I meant by that is we'll do the surgery in hypnosis with no anaesthesia, none whatsoever, just using the power of her mind to anaesthetise her body. Now, the surgeon agreed. We did the surgery. I stayed in the operating theatre throughout the whole of the process, kept her in hypnosis. I actually disassociated her and took her out of her body, out through the roof of the hospital. And throughout the whole of the operation, I guided her on a journey around the stars in order to take her away from what was happening in her body. Surgery was a phenomenal success. The surgeon at the end of this, and it only took about 90 minutes. Before that, he'd been trying 3.5 hours both times before. At the end of the surgery, the surgeon turned to me. He said, I have never seen anything like this in my life. I am totally astonished. He said it was like operating on a dead body. There were no defensive reflexes. He said, give me one of your cards. I must talk about this. Well, I'm still waiting for that telephone call 29 years later. But the good thing is that lady is now 29 years past her die-by date.
I mean, that story, Steve, is absolutely incredible. It's also, in a British context, I'm assuming that's where it was, it's also quite controversial. And your coda at the end there of not having a telephone call for the last 29 years doesn't surprise me, and was leading into my next question, because what, other than astonishment of the surgeon, what was the reaction, if any, to other medical professions, the medical establishment, to what you were doing in that situation?
It was pretty much ignored. I mean, in those days, I used to give talks to doctors in England about hypnosis and about hypnotherapy. And some of the doctors were very open to it, extremely open to it. They would actually refer the patients to me, and in some cases refer their family members to me for therapy. But generally it was ignored. And, the medical model is really so heavily biased in terms of medications and big pharmaceuticals running everything, that okay, not everybody maybe would want to have hypnosurgery, but there are amazing benefits to doing surgery without anesthetic. Just as an example, hypnosis for childbirth is extraordinarily successful. And it speeds the childbirth process up. It's much less stressful for mother and baby. Usually there's no need for gas or air or any sort of type of painkillers. And it's generally ignored in the whole of the medical world. In my opinion, that is obscene. It is obscene that women are giving birth without the opportunity to do so more easily and in a more pain-free method. But that's the medical model.
Now, your work has taken you beyond the medical model, so to speak. It's taken you into some rather interesting places, shall we say, not least prisons. What were you doing in a prison with some of the most dangerous offenders in this country?
I sometimes say I spent 3 years in prison, and most people then back away very quickly. But I was teaching stress management and meditation to prisoners in a Cat A prison in the UK, in Yorkshire.
Outside the UK, a Category A is the most
Yeah,
type of offender.
absolutely. A category A prisoner, murderers, armed robbers, etc., etc. And one of the wings in the prison was a special wing just for some of the most difficult and violent prisoners in the prison system in England to actually spend a bit of time there relaxing, because prison is an incredibly stressful place, and this just gave them chance just to calm down a little bit. And it was there that I was introduced to Charles Bronson, who has got this reputation as being the UK's most violent prisoner.
We better just say again, for anybody who's outside the UK, this is not Charles Bronson, the actor.
No.
British prisoner who I think took the name Charles Bronson from the actor, and was infamous as one of the most dangerous prisoners in this country. And that's who Steve was with. So,
thanks for clarifying that, Sean. Absolutely, yes. So Charles Bronson was an armed robber. He's never actually killed anybody, but he has spent over half of his life in prison, and I think up to about 40 odd years now, and he's in his 60s, late 60s. I met Charlie, and we just got on very, very well. For some reason, he took to me, which surprised me, because he's an enormous man. He does about 3,000 press-ups a day. I mean, he's so strong. The prison system has tried to, wreck him over the years, but he's actually one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. He's stood up against the prison system, and they've never destroyed him. But we found in the period that he was in that prison, we actually found that inside him was a very talented artist, somebody with an extremely strong creative bent. And we brought that out. And so Charlie and myself started to write a radio play together. And all of the ideas came from Charlie. They were all his ideas. And I've put some of the radio play in the book. And it's extraordinary. You would not think that a person, with such a reputation could come up with such an intelligent and striking piece of creativity. So, it was a shame that Charlie unfortunately had to be taken out of that prison, because he actually took somebody hostage, and then they put him into a different prison. But I actually have a lot of time for him in a strange way, because I don't think he should be in prison anymore. He's never killed anybody. And, there are people who murder and they get in and out in less than 10 years. And he's done his time. He's done his porridge, as he would say. I think he needs to be released now.
Now, one other aspect of your work, Steve, is equally controversial, but in a different way, and that is the regression therapy. Can I ask, is this, if you can say this, is this an orthodox part of hypnotherapy, or is this a particular interest that you have?
The regression is a standard part of hypnotherapy. So many hypnotherapists will regress their clients back into childhood, let's say, to release childhood trauma. And that's quite standard. But my model is much bigger than that. So the regression model that I follow is that all of our issues as human beings come from locked-in feelings and emotions from past traumas. And those traumas can take place in any one of three areas. In this lifetime, of course, and most of us, if not all of us, carry emotional baggage from this life, from previous lives, and from our ancestors' lives. So we can inherit trauma from ancestors in our bloodline. And so my work is about taking my clients back into any one or all of those three areas in order to release the emotional trauma and traumas which have caused their issue. And when you release the trauma, the issue, the problem just dissolves away and it gets better. It really can be that simple.
So this isn't really the sort of cliche of going into a trance and then realizing that you were a pharaoh or you were the Queen of England 600 years ago. That's not really, or is it? You're
Well, strangely enough, my first book was called Famous Past Lives because I've actually worked with some people who appear to have been very famous in their previous lives. And that, surprised me because I used to think that anybody who claimed to be famous in a past life was just an egocentric. But I've had quite a few people over the years who have been famous in past lives. So, strangely enough, you mentioned the Queen 600 years ago. I've met both the reincarnation of Queen Elizabeth I and her elder sister, Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary, as we know her in the UK. But the regression therapy is not about all that interest stuff. Regression therapy is about going into the emotional traumas. So we see a lot of tears in this therapy. People cry very often, sometimes they'll scream, sometimes the body shakes. But it's all a way of just releasing this energy from the past, which is stored in the subconscious. And when we release that energy, the problem gets better.
So in a way, on this show, Steve, we've had a number of people talking about time travel. In a way, what you're doing with your hypnotherapy is a kind of an emotional time travel. Is that correct for people so that they return to a place of trauma, somehow deal with it or healed or accept it, and then return to the present?
In a way, yes. But except all the time they are here in the now, but a part of the mind is in the past, you could say. So they're still very aware of where they are. They still know that they're laying in front of me on a computer screen or in the old days in my office, let's say. But a part of the mind has gone back into the past. So let me give you an example from my second book, which was a lady who came with severe back pains. And she had this back pain for some time. She'd even had surgery and they couldn't find anything wrong with her back. So they just stitched her back up and sent her home at the end of surgery. Her subconscious indicated there were 4 past lives causing that back problem. The first past life was the big one. And she went back into a past life in the Second World War where she was a young male Nazi officer. And on the Eastern Front, fighting the Russians, living in terror most of the time. And at some stage, that young man gets shot in the back by a Russian sniper. When the bullet went in the regression session, she jumped about 3 feet in the air and was screaming while she died. And then I just let her die, you could say, which sounds a strange thing to say. She died in the session, and the back problem, after we went back through that death about 4 times actually, but once we'd done that, the energy from that past life, which had been stored in the part of her back where the bullet went, stored in the back this lifetime, was completely freed up and the back pain was completely cured. So that's an example of how regression works into past lives. We are often going back into death experiences in past lives as well. And I would estimate that at least 60% of past life therapy is to release death trauma.
I presume for somebody who wants to be a patient in terms of that form of therapy, there would have to be an acceptance or an understanding of some idea of reincarnation, no?
None whatsoever, no. I've had many people over the years who have don't understand reincarnation, never looked at it. I'll be honest, nowadays most people come to me because I'm well known for the past life work that I do. But again, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, a young 13-year-old boy came to me with migraines, severe migraines. And he was going to a private school in the UK, so in America that would be a public school. And of course his family didn't come from a hippie background or a woo-woo background. They didn't think about past lives or reincarnation. But that boy, 13 years old, bear in mind, he has no concept of past lives. When he went into trance, his subconscious indicated there were 8 past lives causing those migraines. And I've often found, by the way, migraines are so often caused by deaths in past lives where there's been blows to the head. All 8 past lives, we actually went into all 8 of them in 1 hour. We cleared them all. So he went into one past life where, I can't remember all the details now, but he was, let's say, in a battle and somebody came at him and smashed him in the head with an axe and he died. And then he went straight into the next past life where he was a man standing in his garden in a past life. He'd found out that his wife was having an affair, but his wife came up behind him with a big spade and smashed him around the back of the head, and he died straight away. And he went to the next past life where he was in a bar and he got into a fight and they got him down on the floor and they're kicking him in the head and he died. And he went into the next past life where he was a young boy at school who was bullied by a school bully and smashed the boy's head was smashed against a wall, and he died on the way to hospital. And he went into the next past life where he's driving a car in the 1960s without a seatbelt, and a lorry comes into the side of the car and it smashes his head down onto the steering wheel, and he died. And he went into the next past life where he was an old man and he fell from a ladder and landed on his head and died. All 8 past lives, we released them all in one session. The migraines were completely cured. Now, that boy had no conception of past lives, and people would say, well, he made it all up. Why did he make that up? Why does he come to me to help heal with his migraines, and knowing nothing about past lives, he creates this experience of past life deaths? That doesn't make sense. So for me, these are very real past lives, because the energy in them, which is so big sometimes, the emotions, you can't fabricate those emotions. You can't pretend that you're crying or very, very in a really bad emotional state. The emotion comes through and it can be quite overwhelming sometimes.
Unfortunately, Steve, we've come to the end of our time together. Tell people where they can find out more about you and pick up a copy of Adventures of a Hypnotherapist.
Okay, my website, steveburgesshypnosis.com. My YouTube channel, Hypno for All, HYPNO, the number 4ALL. That contains a lot of interviews I've done with my team about regression, but also free hypnotherapy recordings as well for people to listen to. The book, Adventures of a Hypnotherapist, available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all good booksellers, of course.
For now, Steve, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.